Alrighty, well, I know I've already done a rant today, but I don't do them every day, even though I call it the daily rant. It really isn't, because there's days go by when I don't do one, and I'm just walking around in the field right now. I am. Give you a view of what I'm doing. Anyway, I've frozen up. It is cold, though, so it's understandable. There we go, I'm back now. It froze right up there. Even my image is freezing up on the phone. That's how cold it is. Anyway, I've got a tooth back here now with a big pus pocket and the gum and stuff, so that's fun. Anyway, I've got dental infection. Wonderful. Anyway, enough whining about that, I guess. Another thought entered my mind, actually. This is a banner day for me. I must be having a good mental health day because I've had 2 of them today so far. Usually I'm lucky to have one thought enter my mind, and I think they're both actually halfway decent thoughts too, which is kind of nice. I'll tell you what it is anyway, and you can be the judge. You've already heard the first thought because I already posted a rant. It just went up a little while ago. But anyway, I'm going to do another one now. And it has to do with symbolism in public spaces and all that stuff. You know, because again in Canada, this is another thing that we're dealing with now, where we have one group of individuals who are pretty much monopolizing the public spaces with their imagery. And here's the thing about it. At the present time, they're really the only group that's allowed to do this. Public spaces, for the most part, are neutral in this country. But, you know, the LGBTQ alphabet community, they're an exception. They have the right in this country to put their stuff out there in public, and they do quite liberally. No pun intended there. You know, we were moving in this direction under conservative governments of the past too. So, although our current government has really taken it to an extreme, but still, it's not like we got here overnight. This has been in the works for a long time. The first thing I'd like to do is to state that I don't hate members of that community. I don't wish them harm. I have no desire to hurt them, because this is the stuff you get accused of if you're not in favor of every little part of what goes on there. You know, if you're not in favor of everything they're doing, then you're regarded as a hater and somebody who wishes them harm and might even potentially be a threat to them. So I want to make it clear from the outset that I don't wish them any harm, and I don't intend to do them any harm. And I have always been against that sort of thing. And back in the 1980s, when I first spoke against the practice of going after these people and hurting them, which was a practice back then, you know, I caught flack for that. Just like I catch flack for now for not being in support of rainbow crosswalks and rainbow flags hanging everywhere and parades celebrating the homosexual lifestyle and drag queen story hours and so on. Anyway, the bottom line is, with all this being said, the bottom line really is this, to show you some nice scenery. There's my camp. It's kind of a blight on the landscape, isn't it? Anyway, pretty picture other than the old beat up camper sitting there. And the blue tarp over the wood pile and the makeshift blue tarp tent. Anyway, the thing is, what we put on display in our spaces, whether they be in our public spaces or our private spaces, says quite a bit about who we are. For example, if you get invited to somebody's house, when you go into their house, you will learn things about them that you probably didn't know before. If you walk into a Christian's house, let's say you walk into a Catholic person's house, and you see a crucifix on the wall, and you see, with the image of Jesus on it, you see a statue of the Virgin Mary, or a photograph, like a painting of the Virgin Mary, or you see a picture of Jesus with the Sacred Heart, with the heart coming out of his chest, the bleeding heart coming out of his chest with the thorns wrapped around it, and so on. Well, then you know that these people are Roman Catholic. Now, if you entered my grandparents' house when I was growing up, those are the kinds of things you'd see. And if you didn't know that my grandparents were Roman Catholic prior to that, well, you would know it then, you see. Now, if you enter a house and you see a plain crucifix and so on, well, then you know this person is a Christian, but they're not a Catholic, they're a Protestant, because they don't have the image of Christ on the crucifix. I entered a house one time, was actually the home of a female friend of mine, and her at the time, her husband, they're split up now. And the first thing I was confronted with when I walked in was a pornographic photograph. It was hanging on a pillar right in front of the door. So when you walked in, the first thing you saw was a centerfold picture taken from a pornographic magazine of a naked woman. Turns out that particular fellow had some serious issues around sex. Turned out that he had molested children and everything else. That all eventually came out. He had some really bad issues around sex. And so, see, I didn't know that, but when I walked in there and saw that was my first clue. And they had children. So, children had children in the house, and this was hanging up there. This wasn't something that was hidden in his sock drawer, or whatever. This was right out there in the living room when you walked into the house, hanging on the post there, right by the front door. Everybody who came and went could see it, including the children and including the children's friends who would come to visit. And so, you see, that told me something about those people that I didn't know prior to that. So, see, what we put in our public spaces tells a lot about who we are, and also in our private spaces. In our public spaces as a country, and in our private spaces, in our homes, and so on. And see, I'm a big advocate of public spaces being neutral. Look, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus, but I would never push for Christian iconography and Christian imagery to be put out there and put on display everywhere in public, because not everybody is a Christian. We're not living in a theocracy, and therefore we really don't have the right to continuously beat other people over the head with whatever our beliefs are. I don't have the right to force atheists and Muslims and Jews and Buddhists and Hindus and whoever else, for that matter, even Satanists, for that matter. I don't have a right to force them to look at pictures of my God all the time, and Christian imagery and so on. Likewise, I shouldn't be forced to look at pictures of their God. I shouldn't be forced to see the Baphomet all the time, or to see the Buddha, or to see, whatever imagery they happen to have and whatever symbology they happen to have all the time. And that's how we get along, is we don't beat each other over the head with these things. Like even with this video, anybody who disagrees with me or is offended by what I'm saying doesn't have to watch it, They can turn it off. But the thing is, if you're in a public place where you need to be to conduct your business that you do in your daily life, or where you work or whatever, and I'm allowed to put my stuff up all over the place, well, then you're forced to continuously be confronted by my beliefs. Whether you share them or not, you're forced to continuously be confronted by them. So you see, again, I can't advocate for that. I don't like to be forced into those kinds of situations, and I don't really want to be one who's forcing other people into that. If I'm having a conversation with somebody and they're sharing their beliefs, I'll share mine. Some people don't like that. Some people get upset with me for that because they feel like I'm trying to push them in a certain direction, which I'm not doing. It's just simply, if somebody brings up something that's completely in a conversation that's like completely opposite to what I believe, yeah, I can't very well sit there and nod my head and agree with them. And so I'm going to disagree with them, and I'm going to tell them why I disagree with them. But that's not me trying to convert them or trying to beat them over the head with my philosophy or my beliefs. That's just me sharing my perspective. They've shared theirs. I'm going to share mine. But anyway, the bottom line is this, though. I support a person's right to display what they display in their home. Now, I didn't approve of the pornographic picture, and the reason I didn't approve of that is because there were children in the house. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had an issue with it. It was their house. They could hang up whatever they want to hang up. But the fact that there were children in the house, that there was, I didn't think it was good, and that the children had friends that would come and visit and stuff, and, I didn't approve of it for that reason. And like I say, it did turn out there were sexual issues in that house, too. I mean, that was kind of a clue that there was something going on, and, I found out later that it went pretty deep anyway. The sexual issues went very deep in that house with that particular person, with that man, especially, who was married to my friend. Anyway, there was a homosexual couple in the area who flew a rainbow flag on a pole on their property in front of their house. You could see it from the road. I don't have an issue with that. It was their property. That's who they are. They had every right to do that. I don't want them hanging from the public lamppost, though. I don't want that, and I don't want the crosswalks painted up to look like them. But flying it on their own property is fine. There was a man in town. He's actually a man who I have a bad history with. I've had run-ins with this guy. I don't personally like the man. And he had a Confederate flag hanging from his porch. Again, at his own house. It was visible from the street, but it was hanging from his porch on his property. Now, on one of the community pages, Smiths Falls, the town of Smiths Falls, there was people there wanted to get a delegation together. Basically a group of thugs to go and visit this guy and intimidate him into taking his Confederate flag down. Now, personally, I don't care for the Confederate flag. I don't have any attachment to it. I don't hate it, nor do I like it. I understand that many people regard it as offensive. There's many people who regard the rainbow flag as offensive too, but I'll uphold the right of those homosexuals, that homosexual couple, to have their rainbow flag flying on their property and visible from the road, and I'll uphold that man's right to have his Confederate flag flying on his property and visible from the street. And I did. I contributed to the conversation, and I got roasted pretty badly, because basically what I said is, it's on his property. It's none of your business. Leave him alone. Let the man have his flag. Who cares? You're going to form a mob to go to the man's house and intimidate him because you don't like his flag that he's flying on his property because it's visible from the public street. Well, he has a right to fly his flag whether you like it or not. And, but again, I wouldn't support him flying it from a public lamppost, or painting up the pavement to look like a Confederate flag. that same man had an old Buick Regal, an early 80s Buick Regal car. Was it a Regal? No. It was the front-wheel drive version. They had a front-wheel drive. It might have been a Regal, I don't know, but Buick made a front-wheel drive car in the early 80s. They had a kind of a stubby back end on them and a long hood. And they were some of the first really commercially viable front-wheel drive cars to be produced. And they made these things in the late 70s and early 80s. Well, he had one of those anyway. It was a Buick something or other. Anyway, and I never took much interest. I never liked front-wheel drive vehicles, so I haven't paid much attention to what it was. Oh, there's some geese. I don't know if you can see them, but anyway. But here's the thing. They have a show and shine at the local Walmart in the summertime. One of the local car groups does, car club. And he brought his car up there, which was fine. It was a classic. It's a classic car now. He was entitled to bring it up there. It's over 30 years old. Put it on display. All are welcome who have classic cars and want to put them on display. But what he did is he opened up his hood and he hung his Confederate flag up from his hood. And the show organizers went over and they talked to him. They said, hey, can't have that here. Take it down. Take it down. He said, no, sir, I will not. They said, well, then, close your hood up and get out of here. You're not welcome here. You know? Well, see, I uphold them in that because that was their event and that flag did not represent them. It did not represent their values and their beliefs. And also, they were using the parking lot of a local business, of Walmart, by the good graces of that business. That flag may or may not, I don't know, I'm thinking it probably doesn't represent the values of Walmart. So again, Walmart could have come back on the organizers of that event and said, you're not allowed to hold your event here anymore because you allowed that flag to be put on display and it offended some of our customers and it doesn't really represent our corporate values and so on. So see, the organizers of the event were right and they did the right thing in telling him to either take his flag down or leave. So that's a case where I don't uphold him. I don't believe he had a right to do that, and I do believe that the organizers of the car show, the show and shine, did the right thing. I think they did the proper thing in asking him to leave. Okay, here's the thing. When you have things on display, the things you have on display in your space say something about who you are. You know, they do. I mean, look, you could say this channel says something about who I am. The things that I choose to share on this channel say something about who I am. They say something about what kind of man I am. They say something about my beliefs. They say something about how I live. They say something about my likes and my dislikes and so on. And the thing is, again, in a way, this channel it's public, but it's also my space where I put the things that I want to put out there on it. So this channel, to a large degree, is reflective of who I am. You know, and if you when I had my house, if you went into my house, you would see things in my house that are reflective of who I am, and so on. Anyway, the thing is, when you have one group, though, that can monopolize public spaces for their own stuff, for their own symbology, for their own message, whatever that is, and other groups are not allowed to do so, that creates an imbalance. And what it says is that this group is more valued and more important than all other groups. So when we allow the homosexuals to put their symbology and their imagery up everywhere, what we're saying is that they are more highly valued than other groups in society. Basically, we're all equal, but they're more equal. That's really the message that's being put out there. And if you're a foreign person visiting this country and you see images of whatever posted up everywhere, displayed everywhere, then you will figure that that represents this country. So if you see homosexual images, you'll figure Canada is very much a homosexual country. If you see Christian images, you'll think Canada is very much a Christian country, and so on, you know. If you see, I don't know, images that represent war and violence and stuff, you'll say Canada is Canadian people are very warlike and violent, you know, or whatever. And the thing is, that may not represent everybody. I mean, the reason that Christians aren't allowed to put our imagery up everywhere is because it's considered discriminatory. Because what about people who aren't Christian? You know, they're not represented in that. Well, I think that's a legitimate point. But you know what? I'm not a homosexual. Homosexual imagery doesn't represent me. So why should that be up everywhere in the public spaces? You know, and there's a lot of us who that doesn't represent. And as I said, I'm not against those who it does represent. I don't hate them. I don't wish them harm. And I'm not a threat to them. And in the past, I have even spoken in their defense when we were too far to the other sick extreme. And as I've said in other videos, we do go to sick extremes. That's something society does. And when we were too far the other way and we were actively persecuting these people as a society, I spoke up for them. And I caught flack for that, just like I catch flack now for the things I say. So my issue is not with homosexuals, it's not with transsexuals, but it's with the concept of allowing one particular group in society to monopolize the public space and to put out the imagery, you know, to have their imagery put on display everywhere to the exclusion of all other groups. I think if we're going to let the homosexuals put it out there, then we have to let everybody else put it out there too. And that would just get very cumbersome and very complicated. And then there'd be disputes because certain places would be prime places and the homosexuals would be flying their rainbow flags from the lamppost downtown, and the Christians would be saying, well, we want to fly our flags from the lamppost. You guys, you homosexuals, have been doing it for a while, now we want to do it. And then the homosexuals would be saying, well, we don't want to take our flags down. And the Christians would be saying, well, you should, because we want to fly our flags for a while, you know. And then the Muslims would be in there saying, well, we want to put our stuff up, or, you know, and it would just never end, you know. You'd have a crucifix on one corner and a Baphomet down the street and a Buddha statue across the road, and, you know, the gay flag flying up over here, and, you know, the rainbow flag. It would just never end. And so that's why it's best the public spaces remain neutral. Anyway, bottom line is this. When you know, what you put in public represents who you are. In Canada, not everybody's a homosexual. Not everybody is okay with the imagery being put everywhere. You know,